Talking with Tom. Turn your dial to cable 18. You will see the best in TV. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Sit back and listen. You will hear the best conversation of the year. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom. Just talking with Tom.
Welcome to Talking with Tom. I'm Tom Dacey alongside Ed McCarver. Hello, Edward.
Hello, Tommy. How are you? Good to be back here on a sultry June evening in North Haven.
Yes, I was just going to say, what a weird weather pattern we've been having lately, huh?
Yeah, it's crazy. It just seems like a couple of months ago we were complaining about snow, and now we're getting rain. It's just it's a never-ending fight. But I prefer this to shoveling. You don't have to shovel 3 or 4 inches of rain.
I'm just looking forward to the nice sunny weather so I can get out and about in my chair. You know.
Yeah.
It's been rough. I understand we had 2 tornadoes. Touchdown.
You know, I did hear that
yesterday.
Up in Windsor Locks, and I think one other town there.
Fairfield.
Was one. Fairfield had one too, so both ends of the state. And I am reminded that in 1989 there was a massive tornado. July 10th, 1989, I remember, that hit Litchfield and actually went down to one of our sister towns, Hamden, down here. I remember that because I was working at the time for the phone company, and it was a hectic couple of weeks that followed after that when that tornado hit. So 'tis the season for tornadoes now.
I remember when that one hit because it was 5 days before my brother John got married.
Really?
And he already had the new home, and he's right on the Hamden New Haven line. Everything around him was destroyed.
But his home was okay.
Yep.
And he still got married.
Yep.
All right, well, good for him. Good for him. Mother Nature is not going to wreck his wedding.
No, but I'm really looking forward to our show this evening. I know our guest this evening was supposed to be with us in April. Mm-hmm. But as you remember, that was the show that I had to cancel because of my recent health issue.
That's right. So we pushed it up a few months, and let me tell the members of our listening audience that it is well worth the wait. So, it's going to be a fun show tonight.
But Ed, as I usually say at this time, have you done your homework?
Yes, I have, young man. I want to keep this job.
With Ed's humor news, take it away, Goob.
All right, thank you, Tommy. Well, Tom, police have intervened after a man posted an antique coffin for sale on Craigslist, which contained a real skeleton. The Order of Odd Fellows, based in Council Bluffs, Iowa, put the ghoulish item up for sale for $12,000 in a bid to raise funds to pay property taxes on a meeting hall. Police were alerted to the online ad, seized the coffin and its contents, and deemed the sale of the skeleton illegal under Iowa law. The bones were sent to the state medical examiner's laboratory to be examined by an anthropologist. Order of Odd Fellows member Dave Bergstrom said a local historian told him the skeleton was donated to the organization by a local doctor after he retired in the 1880s. Bergstrom added the laboratory is welcome to keep the skeleton, as his priority is to, quote, sell the coffin and pay those taxes. In New Zealand, emergency workers feared a woman had been gagged when they received an unusually tight-lipped call for help. They were worried that the 64-year-old was being held captive, but it turned out she had accidentally superglued her lips together. Ambulance received the call and also called police to inform them of a possible robbery. Police officials said the woman got up in the middle of the night, grabbed what she thought was a tube of medication, and applied it to her lips. The woman was taken to a nearby hospital where she was treated and released. And I did think of Maureen when I heard
I was going to say, maybe we could give that to Maureen to keep you quiet.
There are nights she'd wish I would take it. Well, authorities say an exploding refrigerator led them to a marijuana growing operation in San Diego. Officials say the fridge exploded and caused a fire at a home in the Encanto neighborhood of San Diego. It took firefighters about 30 minutes to douse the fire, and there were no injuries. However, police said authorities discovered pot growing at the house and a quantity of hash oil, which apparently caused the explosion. 3 people were held for questioning. Finally, Tommy, and guest. A huge-headed, duck-footed mix of beagle, boxer, and basset hound was the upset winner at the 25th annual World's Ugliest Dog Contest. Wally, a 4-year-old mutt from Chico, California, was judged as the most unsightly of 30 dogs at the competition. This dog looks like he's been photoshopped with pieces from various dogs and maybe a few other animals, one judge remarked. The dog's owner, Tammy Barbie, got the dog when she was 3 months old. When he was 3 months old, she said, "People come up to me and say, that dog is not right, but I love him." Wally won $1,500 and will appear on the Today Show and Jimmy Kimmel Live, but not Talking with Tom. So, and that's a very brief look at some of the more offbeat stories.
Great job as always, Ed.
Thank you. Thank you.
Before I introduce our guest, I just want to say that, I first met our guest through our good friend and the composer of our Talking with Tom theme, Tony Persia.
Oh, okay, very good.
So that's when I first met our guest. So at this time, I'd like to formally introduce our good friend, musician, and Wallingford Town Councilor, Vincent Cervoni. Welcome, Vin.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for having me. I'm glad you're feeling better so I can be here.
Thank you. Thank you. I know I actually had my brother Charlie call that morning from the hospital, call Vinny's office to let him know we were going to have to postpone.
Yeah.
And he was gracious enough to just say, let me know when and where, and we'll reschedule.
Well, besides being a councilman from Wallingford, he's an outstanding musician. Actually, is in 2 bands that we'll get to later. So we know it will be worth the wait. And if you have any questions or comments, you're welcome to give us a call. You can see at the bottom right-hand portion of your screen, 203-234-0025, and we're on for about 56 or so minutes, so Vinny will perform for us later on, but we'll begin with some questions.
I'd like to start out by asking you, when did you first get interested in music, Vin?
So long ago that I can't remember exactly when. I've probably been interested in it in some way, shape, or form all my life. My earliest memories of music were when, Elvis's movies were being run 10 and 15 years after they were made. They were being run on television, on network television. So that was some of my earliest exposure to music.
You were a very young child at the time, or?
Oh yeah, I was born in the late 60s. So, music was still on network television back in those days. It hadn't been segregated into MTV and then from where it finally disappeared. But those were my earliest memories. And in all of those movies, he'd pick up a guitar, pretend to strum, sing a little, and there would be girls all around him. And, some 40 years later, I've yet to recreate those exact scenes. But I might die trying. So
was it just Elvis or some of the other movies? I think I'm thinking of the Beach Blanket bingo movies.
Funicello?
Yeah, those were kind of more bubblegum than I was interested in. It was the guitar for me. Watching people play the guitar was what really drew me in to the whole music thing. And when I started taking music lessons, it was on keyboard instruments, on an electric organ, actually before that an accordion, and I never did much with it until I picked up the guitar when I was about 12. And once I picked up the guitar, I just didn't stop playing. There were times in my life during say college and law school when I played a little less, but it was really about the guitar for me.
You mentioned Elvis first. Did you have any musical influences when you were growing up? Somebody that you wanted to emulate, or?
When I picked up the guitar, the music I was listening to in the early '80s was some of the rock that was on MTV. Some of the first songs I learned were by Def Leppard and Journey, and some of those. Neil Schon was a bit of an influence back then. But once I discovered Eric Clapton, he really became my biggest single influence. But I've also been influenced by, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jimi Hendrix, Jeff Healey. Recently, I've been listening to a lot of Terry Kath, who was the guitar player in Chicago from when they were formed until he died in 1978.
Even back when they were known as the Chicago Transit Authority?
That one album,
That's back in my prime, Chicago Transit Authority.
I think those first two albums are some of the greatest albums in rock and roll history, the Chicago Transit Authority and Chicago 2.
And I believe they still tour, don't they? I think they were in Oakdale not too long ago, or they're coming out.
I thought I heard something about that. I don't know if they're coming or...
Well, at the risk of sounding like a snob, if I can't see Terry Kath play, I'll take a pass on seeing Chicago and what it is today. What it became after he passed was very Peter Cetera influenced, and that was great for the 80s, but not so much what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
Now, Vinny, you play with two different bands, Bluesberry Pie and 42nd Street. How do their styles differ?
Bluesberry Pie I formed as a trio back in 1995. And we started off playing a lot of blues and very blues-influenced rock music, and that was kind of the heart of the experience. And that gradually expanded, and now that's a 6-piece band today. The way I met you through Tony Persia was since about 2001. I've been in bands with his daughter, Carissa, and she's one of those 6 pieces that eventually became what Bluesberry Pie is today. The other thing that Bluesberry Pie does is we play music that I write. And I published one CD back in 2002, and I've been working on the follow-up for 11 years now. So hopefully someday it'll get printed and published.
Well, I look forward to that.
And then you asked about 42nd Street, and the way they differ is 42nd Street is really a pop cover band. We play dance-oriented popular music from the 40s standards through some modern, more modern dance rock, a little bit of country music, but a broad array of songs to make a party more fun.
And you were just at J-Ruse recently here in North Haven.
We were there about a month ago. We had a great time.
And 42nd Street will be playing on Saturday, July 20th, over in Hamden at DeMille's on Whitney. So, the opportunity to see 42nd Street Band. You mentioned Bluesberry Pie and starting the band. How difficult is it or time-consuming is it to start a band? Do you have to find musicians who have the same interest? You mentioned the blues, the same interest that you have in the musical genre?
You do. And starting a band when you're in your 20s is a lot easier than starting one when you're in your 40s and have different levels of responsibilities, besides dragging your guitar around.
Yeah.
But Bluesberry Pie started after I had just finished playing with a band called 3 at Large, which lasted maybe a year. And as that band fell apart because one of our members moved to Georgia, I started talking to a friend of mine who's a musician. He hooked me up with a friend of his who was looking for a band, and that's kind of how that started. And the two guys who helped me form Bluesberry Pie aren't in the band anymore. I kind of went in a direction that that allowed me to work with other musicians. But it's once you're kind of in the scene, the local scene, who you begin to get to know musicians who know other musicians, and you form a network. And usually through that network, that's how you can start a band.
How long does that take to get in the scene? Is it years or?
No, I think I really got in the scene by hanging out at what was back then Joe's Music in Wallingford. I didn't have a lot to do on a Saturday morning, so I'd sit in there and play guitar, try every guitar on the wall, and meet other musicians as they walked in and out. And I got to know Pat Russo, who gives lessons there. He teaches guitar there.
I'm trying to think. Joe's Music in Wallingford, Route 5?
Yes. Now it's called Joe's Guitars.
Okay. Across from Valenti Chevrolet?
That was back in the 80s. It was across from Valenti Chevrolet.
Oh.
In the early 90s, the first Joe Modifica, moved the store up to right next door to the Neptune Diner that recently closed.
Oh, okay.
So across from Home Depot.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it was really hanging out in that store that, I got to know people on the scene.
Now, Vinny, you've also written some of your own music. What's easier when writing? Is it the melody or the lyrics?
I wish I could say that I was so disciplined as to say that I write a song the same way every time. And it just depends upon what inspires you. Sometimes I'll have a riff, a guitar riff running through my head, and I'll build the song around that. Sometimes I'll have a poetic idea, and then I'll compose a melody to the poem that becomes the lyrics of the song, and then write the rest of the music around that. But to say one's easier than the other I'm not the guy to ask that question.
Well, I remember when we've interviewed other musicians, and some of them say it's, the lyrics are the easiest part, or the melody is, and then it'll take a while for the second part to come in. And also, I guess it can be very time-consuming. Have you ever? We talked to some musicians. I remember they say they'll carry a notebook or something. If something strikes them, they'll write it down and then work on it. Do you subscribe to that, or has that ever happened to you, where something will just pop into your head?
I am always near paper or a computer by virtue of what I do for a living. So I don't necessarily need to carry a notebook. Sometimes I'll have scraps in my pocket, but I do tend to write on my laptop. I don't know if you remember, it was sometime in the last decade, it was in the news that Bono's laptop was either lost or stolen. And I remember that he was offering a tremendous reward to recover that laptop because it had all of his song ideas on it.
Really?
Yeah. So I actually tend to compose lyrics on a computer because, in a word processor, it's very easy to edit. And when I write, I don't chart, traditional score. I letter a chord over the song instead of writing on a staff. I don't read music very proficiently. If somebody wants me to do a piece that's written in traditional staff score, I need a little lead time with it, a week or so to work through it.
Do you have an idea how many songs you have written?
I'm going to say in the range of 20.
20.
At this point. Yeah. Some of them I wouldn't publish.
But others you're proud of.
Yeah.
You had played.
I did publish a CD back in '02, and there's 9 songs and 2 instrumental pieces on it. And I've got 6 or 7 that are, partially recorded that I hope to release maybe in this decade, since I didn't release them in the last decade. Life kind of gets in the way of your art.
Yeah.
There's an idea. When he gets it ready, we can have a CD release party right here on Talking with Tom.
Yeah, that would be nice. That would be nice. We're talking with Wallingford Town Councilman Vincent Cervoni, also musician Vince Cervoni, and I see you've brought your guitar with us.
I had one more question for him before we have him play. I do want to hear him play in a few moments, but you mentioned a bit earlier about juggling your schedule. How do you manage to find time to do everything? Besides being a town councilor and a musician, you are also an attorney. How do you find time to juggle everything?
I'm grateful for electronic calendars that I can see in multiple places, and that's very helpful. I am grateful for a very understanding wife. I've only been married 5 years, but that helps. And really, it's a function of planning ahead far enough and making sure that you are in the right place when you're supposed to be there. When it comes to musical stuff, typically it more often than not doesn't happen during the day. If anything, the music competes with the politics and or government, and it has to lose, because if you take on a position like a town council position, that has to come first. but you know, practicing law dominates my days and sometimes leaks into the nights.
Is your wife a musician as well? Or?
She's not at all. Played instruments as a child, but not. She doesn't continue to be a musician. No.
But she is a fan of your music.
She is a fan. At times reticent, but a fan.
Now, how long have you been serving on the town council?
This is nearing the end of my second term, so approaching 4 years.
And I know we were talking off air. Do you feel that a 2-year term is long enough, or do you think they should be lengthened?
2 years goes by awfully quickly. You know, in your first term, you spend most of that first year of the first term really getting to know the inner workings of what your obligations are and what the job does and how to work through the rules of the council and the ordinances and that sort of thing. I did have some government experience. I was an assistant town attorney for 5 years before getting on the council, so that, you know, I feel like I might have had a leg up coming in, but you really spend that first year getting to know the job, and then in the second year you become very aware that you're in an election year, and that kind of has an impact on your thinking and on your decision making. To say that it doesn't, I don't think that could be really honest. So I feel that 2 years is short. It goes by entirely too quickly. You know, I feel like I just put away the campaign material from the last election, and hopefully, you know, if all goes well in July at the caucus, I'll be dusting it off again, bring it up from the basement to start promoting this year's campaign.
I think you'll be okay. I think you'll have no problem there.
And I remember we had Mike Frieda on the past show, the first selectman here in North Haven. I think he said the same thing. The 2 years is
goes by like 2 weeks
sometimes, so you have to worry about the campaign when you're...
I have one more question, but I'm going to let Vinny play first, and then I'll come back with my next question for him. So you want to play a number for us, Vin?
Sure. Hopefully I don't knock the mic around too much. But this song I wrote, those of you who know me know I started dating my wife when the first George Bush was president. And at the end of the 90s, she started working for a law firm in Manhattan, and they were sending her all over the United States for work. So we started communicating a lot by email, because you couldn't always interrupt your day or night, in that case, for a phone call. So I wrote this song, and it was really timely when I wrote it at the end of the 90s. And I think now, even though it talks about communicating online, it might be a little dated. So it's called Crying in My Keyboard.
Crying in My Keyboard, Vincent Cervoni.
My baby's flying away today. I hope to chat with her online. My baby's flying away today. I hope to chat with her online. Well, I'll be crying in my keyboard, emailing all the time. Got a mouse in my right hand, I got my keyboard in my lap. Got a mouse in my right hand, got my keyboard in my lap. I'm gonna try and find a private room so my girl and I can chat. My baby's flying away. My baby's flying away. My baby's flying away. My baby's flying away. Or I'll be crying in my keyboard, emailing all the time. got online this morning to look for email in my box. When I mouse clicked on the envelope, sorry was all I got. Well, I don't know if she got my message. Did she forget her own laptop? Get my baby online. Get my baby online. Get my baby online. Get my baby online. Oh, I'll be crying in my keyboard about this lonesome heart of mine.
Vincent Cervoni.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Musician Vincent Cervoni of the 42nd Street Band, who you can see this Saturday, or July 20th, I think it's a Saturday, at Hamden, DeMills on Whitney. Vince Cervoni with the 42nd Street Band. You're welcome to give us a call here if you have any questions for Vincent or for us at 203-234-0025. How long did it take to compose that song?
That one actually happened pretty quickly. You know, again, this was back in maybe 2000, and it was the kind of song that once it started, Cummings kind of wrote itself. Mm-hmm. You know, and we really weren't using chat rooms. You know, I kind of missed that whole chat room experience. But you know, we were finding email was virtually close to instantaneous back then. So if we happened to be working and have an email browser open at the same time, you know, we could communicate pretty quickly. But she was flying all over the country, and you know, I was emailing her from place to place.
Did she like the song? Your girlfriend, now bride?
Yes. She has said nice things about that one.
Very good.
Now, before I was asking you some questions about your career on the town council, I would just like to know, what are the pressing issues at this time with the Wallingford Town Council?
Well, it is July, which is typically a slow time of year in government. You know, it's the beginning of the new fiscal year. So we've done some wrap-up stuff in June. We're going to have one meeting in July and one or two meetings in August because business does seem to slow down a little bit. In terms of hot issues before the council, I like to think about what brought a lot of people in front of us in recent times. You know, in Wallingford, we had an opportunity to expand the cemetery by purchasing two adjoining properties, both of which were being marketed to some extent at the same time.
We should mention this is the Center Street Cemetery, which is for our North Haven viewers who might not know. It's in downtown Wallingford. So
it's quite a piece of history. It's the third oldest continuously operating cemetery in the state of Connecticut. And I guess Moses Yale Beach is buried there, and he was one of the founders of the is it the Associated Press or not the Associated Press?
UPI? Is it United?
One of the big publishing conglomerates from the 1800s. And there's a memorial to Lyman Hall there, who was one of the signers of the Declaration of Independence.
Yeah, Bob Devaney, who's the caretaker down there, each year, and I'm sure you're familiar with it, each year around Celebrate Wallingford, he does what they call a cemetery tour, where he gets local people to reenact.
You were actually part of that one.
I actually was Samuel Whittlesey one year, and Maureen's son, David Cunningham, actually was Captain Tony Smith.
And of course, our good friend Mike Stevens is involved in that too.
Yes, Mike Stevens is the host of it. And actually, he played Moses Y. Beach one year. So it's it's a historic piece of property, and Devaney does a good job down there with the cemetery.
And in the what I'll refer to as the southeast corner of the cemetery is where the garage is located. You know, where his tools are kept, and he has a little cubicle office, probably the size of the desk that you're both sitting at. And the building, I understand, is become inadequate. It's falling down. A year ago, they acquired funds to purchase a backhoe, because until a year ago, Bob Devaney was digging graves by hand. And we don't have a place to currently house the backhoe.
I think he has it under a tarp. I think I
Yep,
saw
he
that.
does.
Yeah.
I saw that.
Yeah.
He does. So we had this opportunity to expand in that same corner. There's two properties, and one's kind of in front of the other. The rear property we were able to contract to purchase in the $140-something thousand range. The front property is mortgaged well beyond its value. It was purchased in 2007, where you could borrow more money than you needed to buy a piece of property. It continues to be mortgaged excessively. The town tried to negotiate with the two lenders involved, and after doing an appraisal that came in at $85,000, the bank, the second mortgage holder, said no, because we won't get any money out of that. And I think a municipality that's using taxpayers' money to purchase property has to be careful about what it spends. So if you get an appraisal, you really need to stick close to that. There wasn't room to negotiate. So the council approved acquiring the property by eminent domain. This is a public use. The town-owned cemetery would be the use of the property. And it turns out that when you take a property by eminent domain, you do two appraisals, and you pay into court the average of the appraisals. In this case, our second appraisal came in at $95,000. So the eminent domain price of the property is going to be $90,000. That money will be paid into court since the council has approved it, and the court will then distribute it to the parties that have a right to distribution. But that was a very lengthy debate on the issue of whether or not government should be taking property for this purpose or using eminent domain.
You mentioned eminent domain. I know it's another hot issue in Wallingford, but very briefly, your views on the proposed railroad station in Wallingford, which I know is, if this is a Wallingford station, we probably could talk for hours on it.
I'm sure the phone would be ringing, but I can't think of a better way to describe it than it's being railroaded through town.
No pun intended.
No pun intended,
No pun.
or not. This is a state project, and a year ago they came. The engineering department came before the council to ask our opinion about where we thought the station should go. One site being proposed was down by Judd Square, kind of behind the other side of the tracks from Dairy Queen.
Yep.
And the other site proposed is the North Cherry Street Cerrito site. And, in my opinion, when you're a public official, you can't necessarily be an expert on everything. We heard from public safety that the better location of the two was the more northerly location, the North Cherry Street in Cerrito
The Cerrito
site,
location, okay.
because it would result in shorter periods of shutdown of street blockages from the train stopping to pick up passengers. And with this new rail line, during peak times, I think we're going to have something like 16 trains or something coming through town.
A lot more than they have now in town.
Clearly.
So.
And so the majority on the council, hearing public safety concerns, voted in favor of public safety. I understand, but I mean, that's the extent to which the council may have had an influence on the decision. What we were told is the state's going to do what they think is best anyway. They kind of wanted us to endorse the direction they were heading in. I understand there has been some local attempt at getting the state to redirect away from the Cerrito property, which is, it's on Route 5, and it's kind of two or three doors up from the Holy Trinity Church. And despite some real local efforts, it seems that the state is going to continue with its plan. So, while
To be continued, there'll be more long council meetings or more discussion?
I think there's going to be more public discussion. I'm not so sure that the council's going to be involved much anymore. The last time the council was involved in a meeting and discussed this topic, it was just that a council meeting was used as an opportunity for Mr. Bernick, who's I think the lead engineer from the state on the project manager, for Mr. Bernick to present to the public. It was a convenient public forum. But this is something that's out of the hands of the council.
We're talking with Wallingford Town Councilman Vincent Cervoni, also a musician, also a lawyer. You mentioned you have a very busy schedule. One more council question I had. With the length of the council meetings and the agendas and the fact that some of the meetings go on for hours and hours, did you anticipate this when you were first elected to the council, that it would be a marathon in and of itself doing this job?
I had some idea of what the time commitment would be. Typically, you're out of a meeting at 10 o'clock at night. That seems to be,
And they start at 6:30, is it?
6:30.
So it's a good four.
Yeah,
4+ hours.
typically 9:30, 10 o'clock is when a meeting's going to end.
What's been the longest meeting since you've been on there?
We definitely had a meeting that went after midnight.
Yes, I was there.
For the whole thing?
Yep.
Yeah, that was quite an experience. And as much as it can happen, while it's happening, business is still going on and people are still talking. As important as it is, it's still kind of slightly disappointing.
I know one of the topics in the past couple of years has been incentive housing. Anything new on that burner?
The incentive housing zone continues to be a topic of discussion. And we've had some joint meetings with the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're going to propose to us, I guess, what I hope to be a final draft of the proposed IH zone regulations. And it'll be interesting to see if the majority of the council will approve them once they're finally proposed to us. But it's a lot of the IH zone is along that railroad corridor, and I think one block up Center Street, going away from the current train station location. It's the optimists say that this is a way to attract new and lively development. One of the things that comes with the IH zone as proposed by the state statutes is the ability to control, or the ability for the Planning and Zoning Department, or the Planning and Zoning Commission, rather, to set design standards. And that's not something that a Planning and Zoning Commission can do. You can't regulate appearances other than to say you can prevent or make illegal something like blight. But that's kind of one of the things that I understand a Planning and Zoning Commission could find attractive, is the ability to determine the appearance of the zone. But it's the hope that if you create these higher density of living units over first floor commercial units, that it'll attract development in the area, and that is an area of town that could use some sprucing up.
You'll be running for your third term on the council. There are some councilmen that have been on there for several years, and I think Wallingford Mayor Dickinson has been there since 1983. Do you see Vincent Cervoni being on the Wallingford Town Council, say, a decade from now, when Tommy and I will be in our 34th year on this show, or whatever?
I don't think so. As I sit here, I do enjoy it. I enjoy being involved. I enjoy the opportunity to serve the public in that capacity. But I'd like to think that there are other intelligent and talented people who should be given the opportunity to have the position. Maybe 10 years could be my outer limit, if you will.
What's the best advice somebody gave you when you decided to make a run for the council? Do you remember?
Boy, that's an interesting question. There were several people who said, "Are you sure you want to do this?"
I was going to say that. Don't do
Really?
it.
Yeah. Well, there is a time commitment, and You know, fortunately, in a town like Wallingford, many more people are happy with you than are unhappy with you. But you're going to become more aware of the people who are unhappy with you as you know, smaller proportion of the population they may be. They tend to be the loudest. But you know, the good advice I had tended to be about campaigning. You know, about making yourself available to the public, and you know, making sure people get the impression that you care about their opinion. I think that's very important.
Have you ever been out like in a local restaurant in town when somebody will come up and say, "Hey, we'll talk about an issue"? Has that ever happened?
It has. It has. And
are you generally okay with that? As long as they're not rude or
exactly. And typically, you know, people introduce themselves and say, "Do you mind if I talk to you about this?" So it's not necessarily a complete affront, or a, you know, a complete intrusion, if you will. So typically, you know, I can't say it's ever happened where I've been, you know, halfway into a steak and somebody has wanted to interrupt me. Usually the timing is more appropriate. But you have to be open to those, what people feel are opportunities.
We were talking off air. One of the recent issues with the town council has been people have been discussing the Wallingford Housing Authority. And to me, that's a personal issue because I happen to be a resident of the Wallingford Housing Authority, and I know these people have good intentions, but my feeling is they don't live there. So who are they to dictate how the Wallingford Housing Authority residents live?
We did talk about that, and I think what you're referring to, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Tom, is for the past several months, Wallingford Housing Authority is getting help from the New Haven Housing Authority.
Yes.
The Wallingford Housing Authority attorney, Roland Young,
Also represents
yes,
New Haven.
does legal work for the New Haven Housing Authority. And she was, I think she acted in some middle capacity to help the relationship form. And there is a group of non-residents who's calling into significant question the propriety of her role as an attorney representing both entities, and have gone so far as to file a grievance against her with the entity that regulates attorneys. And as a town council member, I was copied on a letter that was written by representatives of the residents.
Which I also serve on.
There you go. And the opinion of the residents is that at the time, the Housing Authority is running very well with the assistance of the New Haven Housing Authority. I happen to know some of the maintenance staff, and they too are happy to be working with people from New Haven, both for organizational reasons and for other support reasons. And my understanding is that residents of the Housing Authority property are really happy with the way things are going now. And you know, this legal issue, if it exists, is something that they don't want to see get in the way of good service. Is that right, Tom?
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will say this, I know for a fact that some of the people that originally came over from New Haven have now gone back to New Haven, and they just hired a brand new crew for Wallingford. So.
And I think you're referring to the office staff.
Yeah, the office staff. Some of the office staff that came from New Haven is now back in New Haven, and they hired a brand new crew for Wallingford.
And I think to your point, this was really done for the purpose of transitioning through. Wallingford Housing Authority went from having a full-time executive director to losing that executive director, to having a management company run the majority of their operations, to then deciding to sever its relationship with that management company, and that's when we get involved with the New Haven Housing Authority, the New Haven Housing Authority involvement was intended to be a progression, to hopefully end up in the Wallingford Housing Authority being back to its independent self again.
I echo the maintenance staff because I have no complaints. I'm very happy with the way things are going right now.
And I'm happy to hear that.
But do you have another number for us, Vin?
I'm sure I could come up with something else to entertain you.
And we've got about 13 minutes left in the hour. So
Okay. A friend of mine talks about playing mine and playing theirs. So
And actually, if I may, I think
we
we
have a call.
are once again our crack staff, Nick and the boys, always
We have
do
a
a
call?
good job. Yep, we do have a call, so let's get to that call.
Hi, you're on Talking with Tom.
Good evening, Mr. Daisy, Mr. McCarver, and Mr. Cervoni. This is Michael Cuomo.
Good evening, Mr. Cuomo.
Cool.
how you doing, Mike?
Good. How are you gentlemen doing?
Good, thank you.
Good. I'm hoping my car phone reception's coming in clearly. I'm driving in the limo from Greenwich to Wallingford as we speak.
Back to your palatial estate, huh?
Yes. I have many, but I think tonight I'll just stay put in Wallingford.
Well, you're coming in loud and clear. While we have Michael, we should congratulate him on his return to NHTV tomorrow night at this very channel, Channel 18
Tomorrow night
Comcast,
at
Channel
8,
99.
right, Mike?
Yep. Tomorrow night, 8 to 9, and I appreciate the plug. I'll have a couple guests lined up, and speaking of guests, it's good to see Vinny back on the airwaves.
Thank you, Mike.
So, wanted to wish everyone a happy 4th of July, and, if you guys get a chance to go out and see the fireworks, I believe Wallingford is having them Saturday. I don't know if North Haven does them.
No, there's no fireworks in North Haven.
There's not, okay.
Ooh.
Not legal ones, anyway.
Yeah,
And you're right, Wallingford is Saturday, July 6th. So.
okay. Yeah, so I guess weather permitting, because, we never know with the weather now, but I always enjoy going to that each and every year. So that's pretty much it. I don't want to tie you up. I know Vinny's about to play a song from what I hear.
Yes, he is.
All right, Michael.
Do you have a question for him before he plays?
Well, let me think of a good question. Vinny, when's your next band? I apologize. Is it the Blueberry Pie or Bluesberry Pie?
The next time you can see Bluesberry Pie will actually be the first weekend in August, that first Friday night, which I think is the 1st.
Okay.
Or 2nd, August 2nd, will be at Our Lady of Fatima at their carnival. And then Saturday afternoon, which I believe is the 3rd, you can come see us at the Dry Dock Music Festival at Dag Hammarskjöld.
Okay, great. I'll have to
I'll
check
be there.
that out.
I'll be working
Our
there.
Lady of Fatima. I was actually, I had my baptism there as a young child.
Well, then it'll be a
And
good place for you to
first
come
Holy
back
Communion.
to.
Very good. Well, you'll have a religious experience hearing Vinny and the rest of the Bluesberry Pie players up at the Lady of Fatima Carnival.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, that sounds good. I'll appreciate the time, gentlemen, and you guys have a good show. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike, and we'll see you tomorrow night.
All right, take care, guys.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you, Michael.
Bye. Yep.
That was Mike Cuomo with Open Mic tomorrow night at 8 o'clock right on this network. We've got less than 10 minutes left. So you're saying you have another song for us?
Yeah, I'm going to play one of theirs. I got caught listening to Spotify today by my friend Louise, and she was happy that I was listening to Stevie Ray Vaughan. So, don't know if you're watching or listening, Louise, but this is for you.
It's sad to the blind. My baby loving 'cause the sun is shine, and she's my sweet little thing. She's my pride and joy. She's my sweetie little baby. I'm her little lover boy. Well, I love my lady with my heart and soul. Love like mine won't never grow old, and she's my sweet little thing. Well, she's my pride and joy. She's my sweetie little baby. I'm her little lover boy. Well, I love my lady. She's long and lean. You mess with her, you see this man get mean. She's my sweet little thing. Well, she's my pride and joy. She's my sweetie little baby. I'm her little lover boy. Like the finest wine, I'll stick with her until the end of time, and she's my sweet little thing. Well, she's my pride and joy. She's my sweet little baby. I'm her little lover boy. Well, I love my lady with my heart and soul. Love like mine won't never, ever, ever go. Well, she's my pride and joy. She's my sweetie little baby. I'm her little lover boy.
All right. We've got about 5 minutes left. I know we're going to have Vinny play us out. Vincent Cervoni. You can see him with the 42nd Street Band on Saturday, July 20th in Hamden at DeMills on Whitney.
And just quickly mention your two Facebook pages for the two bands.
Yes, Bluesberry Pie has a Facebook page, and 42nd Street has a Facebook page. I wish I could tell you the exact URL, but if you go to Facebook and you search for 42nd Street Band, use 42ND Street Band. Bluesberry Pie is spelled BLUZBERRY, one word, and then PI, no E at the end.
How important is Facebook and YouTube for a band?
It's become more important. We don't have a big YouTube presence. But you have to have a living, breathing Facebook page. 5 years ago it was having a living, breathing MySpace page.
MySpace, now it's Facebook.
Yeah. So it's become very important.
I wanted to ask you very quickly, what other types of music do you like? If you have a tough council meeting and you want to unwind, what does Vincent Cervoni put on to listen to?
In that brief ride home, it could be a variety of things. It could be some straight modal or bebop jazz. It could be some jazz fusion. It could be some popular blues. It could be some rock and roll.
I'm waiting for Sinatra. So
I do listen to Sinatra. When people ask me what variety of music I listen to everything except for really harsh heavy metal, and some of the hip hop rap is a little out there for me. And if you gave me a choice between modern R&B music and classic 60s and 70s R&B soul, I'd choose the 60s and 70s R&B soul. Yeah, I guess when it comes to music, I'm an old soul. A friend of mine on MySpace, on Facebook, accused me of being 80 years old when it comes to my music taste.
We have
Being close to that age myself, there's nothing wrong with that.
We have
Take your
less
word
than
for it.
3 minutes. So I want to thank Vinny for being here this evening.
Thank you for having
And
me.
hopefully you'll come back and see us again.
If you'll have me, if you'll look at the tape rolling back and it all worked out for you.
But we want to thank everybody for joining us this evening, Ed. And we will be back here next month on the first Tuesday of August. So at this time, Vinny's going to play us out. And good night, everybody. We'll see you next month.